My sister-in-law controls my brother, bullies my parents, and neglects her kids. Now I'm done playing nice. My brother Fred, 35, married his wife, Elaine, 35, when they were 20. They were in each other's first real relationship and got engaged in 6 months. I was 17 then, going to a Christian summer camp that I had been going to for years. Right before I left, Fred and Elaine sat me down and talked about how, as a 17-year-old and going to be a senior in high school, I was going to be tempted to do all kinds of things. They encouraged me to stay chaste and reminded me that purity was my biggest asset and that I needed to wait for the right person like they did and not get up to sneaking out shenanigans. They specifically called themselves my purity role models. So imagine my surprise when I got back at the end of the month and was told that Elaine was pregnant. They went from planning a lovely winter wedding to a shotgun summer one instead, despite feeling very lied to and them never addressing the fact they had that purity conversation while they were doing it. I was supportive of them and helped with the wedding details and being around. When they married and gave birth, I was an on-call nanny, helping whenever possible. I would go over and spend the night so my brother could work and Elaine could sleep. She was getting her bachelor's degree and working full-time. He was on third shift. I cleaned, cooked, and cared for my nephew and my other nephew when they got pregnant again 18 months later. I stayed around our hometown, working retail and helping them raise their sons until I got a chance to go across the country, working for a mission group specializing in disaster relief. I did admin work but loved it. At the same time, Elaine and Fred moved 4 states away from my parents for her job, and my little brother, Jack, went to college. Us all leaving at the same time, and Elaine and Fred having kids 3 and 4 during that time, gave my parents bad separation anxiety, especially my mom. During the moves, I began to notice a significant shift in Elaine. She didn't want to talk to me anymore and often dismissed me when I called. When I did FaceTime or visit, I noticed she would bully Fred, scoff when he did things for her, demanded he cater to her the moment she got home, and constantly talked down to him. I tried to redirect her nicely and she got mad at me, which made Fred get mad at me. I also noticed Elaine had a bad habit of favoring her youngest child. It hadn't been noticeable with kid 1 or 2, but when her third came along, she doted on him and ignored the other 2. Then, when the 4th was born, she stopped attending 3 and put all her energy into 4. Fred noticed this a bit and tried to make up for it, as did my mom, dad, Jack, and I. We all moved back to our state within a few years, though we were a little scattered about. Fred and Elaine were 3 hours from my parents, Jack was an hour away in the opposite direction, and I was in a town close to my parents. My parents were thrilled about us being back and tried to see all of us as much as they could. Fred and Elaine got very entitled when they moved back, knowing they had the only grandkids for my parents and held it over my parents' heads. My grandparents were not nice people, and my parents, who both broke cycles of abuse and neglect, were scared to be seen as monster-in-laws like their parents were. Elaine began to play on the fear and even said my mom was a narcissist and that if she didn't try and do what Elaine said, she would cut off contact. My mom is the nicest person you will ever meet, and she constantly drops everything to help Elaine, despite being diagnosed with POTS and having chronically low energy. Elaine's brother had to make her stop, saying he would cut Elaine off if she ever disrespected my mom like that again. Fred did not stand up for our mom at all. I found out about this a couple years after the fact from Elaine's brother, as my parents hid Elaine's bullying from Jack and I so as to not cause drama. When Elaine and Fred moved back, they also expected me to resume nanny duties, all of which had been unpaid, by the way, and put my job in college on hold to be there for them. Despite me living 2.5 hours away from them, Fred and Elaine nearly disowned me when I refused to call in sick so I could babysit for them at the last minute when my mom got sick and couldn't watch their kids. I thought it made more sense for Fred or Elaine to call in sick and watch their kids or call their church's emergency sitter service. They told my parents that I screamed at them, I did not, and that I called my nephew's burdens hell to the no. The only reason there was a calm outcome was that my cousin had been staying at my apartment while he was at the college for a campus tour and had been there and had overheard the phone call. He set the record straight, my parents apologized, but Fred and Elaine never apologized to me. Everyone now acts like this never happened, but I am still upset about the situation. I can't bring it up or demand an apology without causing a gigantic scene. Not long after that, Elaine got pregnant for the 5th time with their daughter. The 4 boys may as well have ceased to exist to Elaine, and she put their girl at the forefront of everything. Fred also began favoring her. He still gave the boys attention and did things with them, but as niece grew older he would not enforce boundaries with her, would not make her do chores, and often let her do and say whatever she wanted. The boys were and are expected to cater to their sister. Their feelings toward their daughter versus their boys came to a head when my Fred and Elaine told me and my dad to our faces that their daughter was the most important thing in their lives, more so than anything. When I mentioned that their sons should be held in the same regard, both said they loved their sons but their daughter just loved them more fully, and that surely Dad understood that you loved a daughter more. Well, Dad lost his mind at the both of them. He and Mom never favored me over my brothers growing up. He was outraged that my brother could so blatantly disregard his children. My dad was neglected because he was the youngest and his parents did fundy oldest matters most bullshit to him, so my brother's attitude in favoring a child was particularly triggering to him. Dad called them out, but nothing came of it. Elaine and Fred kept on keeping on and their sons were still treated as loved but not as precious as their sister. My family and I tried to help support the boys and be pillars of love when their parents were dismissive. They still showed up to sporting events and still fed and clothed them, but they never had the same level of attention or fawning as their sister, and if there was a choice about sister's dance class or the boys' soccer game, their parents always went with what sister had going, leaving me and my family to fill in for their boys. Due to our efforts to let the boys know they are loved and our hard work to support them but also not neglect niece and actually enforce boundaries with her, my family became the favorite of the kids. Jack and I were labeled as the best aunt and uncle, and the boys got really protective of us and who we dated, saying they had to be as awesome as we were or they'd scare them off. Thankfully, they love Casey, my brother's long-term GF. Even my niece told me she likes me best since I'm the strict fun aunt, and my youngest nephew feels safe with me because he was diagnosed with POTS like his grandma and has to have a special diet because of it. I take the diet more seriously than his parents do and work hard to make sure he has goodies at holidays and such. Elaine was laid off at the start of COVID and Fred broke his arm, had a bad COVID infection during the lockdown. He could not work for a while and began to rely on my parents to help make ends meet. After the fact, we found out that Fred and Elaine had a settlement from the layoff and the injury and didn't need the money and kept taking their kids on expensive outings, amusement parks, out-of-state museums, and large camping trips. Even after this came out, they still took money from my parents, who again were afraid of being neglectful monster-in-laws. Elaine said she couldn't work because Fred wasn't working, and then both bragged about how well their respective career prospects would be if they were looking for work. Finally, Jack and our aunt, Mom's side, shamed them both into not using our parents for money and got Fred and Elaine back in the workforce. However, they still rely heavily on my parents to buy stuff for the kids and for them to cover dining, trips, and snacks. They also keep expecting my parents to drop everything and drive the 3 hours to their place whenever at Fred and Elaine's whims because they have grandkids. If Jack and I put up boundaries saying we can't get off work or that we are unable to attend, we are shamed by Elaine, saying that we don't care about our nephews and niece. Fred has also insinuated that since we aren't married, their family should be the center of all my and Jack's commitments, even over Jack's current girlfriend and my former boyfriend. Elaine has also insinuated that since I am now 32, I am too old to have kids and that I am a spinster. As wonderful as they are, my parents have fallen entirely for the manipulation, to the point that Fred and Elaine are put first above me and Jack. If Jack and I have a special event that happens to fall during a kid's sports event or school concert, we know our parents will not show up. Jack also has the unfortunate luck that Nice's birthday is the day after his. If we try and meet for dinner, have a party, or even a text conversation about his b-day, Elaine and Fred usurp it and make it about their precious daughter. It's to the point I plan a special dinner with Jack and our parents that Fred and Elaine are not invited to, and my parents are forbidden from letting them know exists. My parents agree to it because they know it will be a problem if they come. If we try to talk to our parents about stuff Elaine and Fred have done, my parents shut the conversation down, saying we need to get along. Toxic situations fracture their families and they don't want their kids to hate each other. They also won't listen to our concerns about them being taken advantage of, saying they are happy to do it because they can and they know how precious it is to have parents who care and want to help. However, it has cost my mom her health and my dad his sanity. He is stressed about his mom. To his credit, my dad is getting really fed up with Fred and Elaine, but he is afraid the boys won't have a support structure if they take a step back or that my mom will resent him for a strained relationship with her son and grandkids. My mom is terrified that Elaine will label her a monster-in-law and make good on her threat from 8 years ago to cut contact. Due to this fear, neither can be reasoned with. It's not even that my mom favors Fred as her eldest, she favors Elaine as DIL because my dad's parents were so awful, and she couldn't stomach being perceived that way by someone. Other minor offenses include Elaine pressuring me as a 22-year-old to have kids, since she already had 2 by that point and I was falling behind. Her bullying Jack for simply being a boy because she doesn't like her own bother, and female favoritism is a tradition in her family. Elaine's bullying makes Fred a bitter jackass, and he now has an inferiority complex and tries to one-up everyone to prove he isn't a loser. I really despise her for this, and him for doing it. Cut off Fred from all his friends and only allows him to be friends with her friends' husbands. Telling Jack that he lacks as a man since he isn't married. Telling me I'm inferior for being an unmarried woman. Butting into Jack's relationship, which he started at 24, and trying to cause drama with our parents about it. dumping all 5 kids on me at every family event and running off to take a nap and not coming except for food or leaving. Fred ignoring everyone at family events to be in his phone the whole time, getting mad at me for having a sibling chat with my brothers that she wasn't a part of and bullied her way into it, saying she's my sibling too and needed to be in the chat, screaming at her kids when they don't sew things her way or make minor mistakes. However, the straw that broke the camel's back happened recently. Niece was having a tantrum, the type that starts small then grows and then you can't stop crying even when you want to. Her parents were both on their phones and not paying attention to their kids, so in normal fashion I went to calm Niece down. I took her into another room so she could calm down, away from prying eyes and get herself together, standard stuff, taking away the audience and giving them space to chill. When Elaine realized Niece and I left the room, she berated Fred for allowing me to handle the tantrum instead of him, that I was not suitable to handle the situation as I was an unstable depressive who took meds. She then said I could not be trusted with their daughter, and did he realize he was a bad parent leaving her with me? Neither of them realized that both Jack and I had overheard them, as did their kids. I have an anxiety disorder due to hormone stuff. It's honestly super mild and easily handled. When I have a problem, it presents very mildly as me getting fatigued, quiet, a bit cynical, and withdrawn. I do not get violent, do not get a temper, and I have never been a danger to anyone or myself. The meds I take help me produce more serotonin, and it completely takes care of it. It is very manageable and honestly such a non-issue that I am still shocked she ever said anything like this. This incident made me realize, though, that I have been fooling myself for years. I don't just dislike my SIL, I hate her guts. I don't want to be in the same room as her, and honestly I have been skipping events I know she and Fred will be at if I know Jack isn't there, as I can't handle her anymore. I am also mad at Fred. I know he has been a victim of Elaine's bullying too, but he hasn't once stood up for his sons or his family. He also takes advantage of my parents and has allowed this nonsense to go on, as it suits his needs. I want to cut contact with them both, go scorched earth, and be done. However, if I do that, I will very effectively alienate myself from my parents and lose contact with my nephews and niece. Also, if I go scorched earth, I know Jack and our cousins will follow suit. Our cousins only put up with Elaine out of respect for my parents, Jack and myself, and are very vocal about how much they dislike Elaine. Jack's only reason for not putting Fred's head on a spike for his behavior toward our family has been me holding him back. If we all go no contact, our nephews in particular will left out to dry and our parents will be forced to choose a side. If they pick Elaine and Fred's side, which they will for the kids' sake, Jack will never forgive him. He is already super close to cutting them out for bending over backward for Elaine and Fred, and a big fight would push him over the edge. I want to force a conversation with my parents about how toxic Fred and Elaine have become and how they have strained every familial tie and have caused them, Jack and myself, trauma. I fear that no good will come of it and I'll only hurt my relationship with them. I worry my parents can't or won't see that they're defending Fred and Elaine and letting them run over everyone has strained their relationship with me, with Jack, with my aunt, who hates watching her older sister get taken advantage of, and even with each other. I don't want to lose my parents and I don't want my family broken beyond repair, but I can't stand those two anymore either. I just don't know what to do anymore. Edited due to format issues. Small update. Thank you all for reminding me that talking is still my best bet and that I need to bite the bullet and do it. No thank you to everyone who said, just go no contact. I've never done it, but how hard can that be? A lot of you read these stories but have not lived them and it shows. It's easy to say no contact, but harder to do. I already have gone no contact with my grandparents and I was the one who convinced my family to cut off contact as well. It's a really heavy burden, even if I stand by the no contact decision and would do it again. And while my brother has turned into a weasel, he was a loving brother while we grew up, and I'll admit, I am holding on to the dimmest hope that one of these days, he wakes up and tells Elaine to fuck off. I know I need to talk to my parents. I also know we need a united front intervention. I've tried that before, but my cousins, aunt, and brother are unwilling to step in and talk with me, so if I do the intervention, I will be doing it alone. I'm going to try and convince Jack to talk with me, though, and see how it goes. On that note, I have been made to realize I can't baby my parents either, and that while it will be harder, there might be a way to cut my SIL and sadly my bro out without losing them. It's going to involve separate holidays, separate vacations, and sadly, a lot of trauma for my parents in their childhood, but it needs to be done, I think. And while Jack and I have lowered our contact, we probably need to go lower. I need to find the balance to get Elaine out of my life and still show up for the kids because I love them and don't want them out of my life. Those kids love me so much, and sometimes, watching them, they remind me of who Fred used to be. I'll let you know how the talk goes when it happens.